you have to particularize your problem. Why can't men find women to date? That's not your problem. Your problem is why you can't find the woman you want. Yeah. And you have to assume that's your problem, because otherwise you have to assume that it's the women's problem. And really? They're all wrong and you're right. Really? Lucky you. Maybe you are. You're an undiscovered gem of some sort. Probably not.
Hit that like, subscribe, hit that notification bell for more content.
A professor at NYU named Scott Galloway, I believe his name was, and he talked about how that there is a mating crisis going on in the Western world, and one of the reasons why he brought it up was that, you know, in the typical college and university, 60% of them is female, 40% of it is male, and a lot of the college-age females or college graduates who are females, they only want partners who are also college graduates. So have you seen that article? And then what are your thoughts about a mating crisis?
Well, what seems to be happening is that if male enrollment falls below a certain percentage, and it looks like it's something like 40%, then the females start not going too. And that's not surprising. I mean, really? Of course. How many people meet their prospective mates in university or college? Like, well, pretty much everyone who goes that route. So it's not surprising that that would happen with young people. And the fact that male enrollment is declining is, well, it's a shocking indictment of the education system in general. And the failure of boys all the way through the education system is the same thing, the increasing failure of boys. So, you know, I thought that part of it might be that girls will play boys' games, but boys won't play girls' games. So there's a bit of that going on with boys themselves, I think. But more of it is...
What do you mean by that, Dr. Peterson?
Well, if a girl plays boys' games, she's admired by the girls and the boys. But if a boy plays girl games, well, he's not necessarily admired by the girls or the boys, right?
That's true.
What games do the girls play?
Who knows, bro? Something to do with toys.
I've never really paid
Barbie
too much
dolls
attention
and
to
stuff.
that now that I think about it.
Me personally, back when you had recess and stuff, it was never the guys trying to get into the girls' play groups. It was always the guys just doing their thing, and then girls were trying to find their way in.
I don't mean that boys shouldn't play with girls or something stupid like that. Yeah. That isn't what I mean. I'm trying to figure out this enrollment issue and what's going on, you know, and obviously girls, for whatever reason, are being encouraged to value their education in a way that boys aren't, you know. And that's partly marketing and messaging as well, because girls are taught fairly consistently now that they should be their best self, and, you know, the world needs more female power and so on and so forth. And that's probably true. But the underlying message there is, well, instead of boy power and man power, not along with, but instead of.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if women ran the world, there'd be no wars. It's like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. You really think that? It's like, how dim can you possibly be to believe that? You know, it's...
So something else I've been hearing, Dr. Peterson, a lot of young men have been sharing with me, and I'm not sure how much you've heard of it or experienced it. They've been sharing that, you know, that they feel as though the average woman has no desire for the average male, and that because of things like social media, online dating, things along those lines, as well as just some of the female empowerment, where a lot of women have this is what they say, an elevated sense of self, that now they feel like they're above a lot of these average males, which also contributes to a disparity between young adults being able to connect and form meaningful relationships.
Yeah, well, women are more picky in their mate choices than men, especially sexually. That's the case in every culture. It's not surprising, because women have more at stake sexually than men do, you know, per episode, because men don't get pregnant, obviously. And so that female pickiness is, that's the case. That's definitely true. Whether it's worse now or not, I doubt if it is. I would say to young men who are irritated at women is, if you're irritated at women, you know, as a class of creature, there's something wrong with you, because they're right. You're wrong. They're right.
Amen.
Not pick you. If they're not picking you, it's because they're right.
I feel like a lot of guys are angry about it, and then they try to like change it.
Hypergamy is a bitch, bro. There's only one way to counteract this: increase your SMV, and you'll be alright.
Don't hate the player, hate the game. You know what I mean?
They're right to not pick you. If they're not picking you, it's because they're right.
Wow.
Now, that might get I know that's a terrible thing to say, and I know perfectly well. It wasn't like I was particularly successful with girls when I was young. So I know what that rejection is like. I know what that fear is like. I don't know it as well as some men know it because I wasn't rejected outright. But what you have to understand is that what do you expect from women? If you got pregnant because you had sex, you'd be pretty damn choosy too. So, clue in a bit. And then, well, don't they find you attractive? Well, maybe you're not. Like, have you paid attention to how you dress? Do you have a plan? Are you as educated as you could be? Are you a liar? Are you a rabid pornography user? Because maybe that's undermining your motivation to seek out a woman and grow yourself up. It's like, if you're rejected constantly and you're out there really trying, because that's another thing to ask yourself is, well, how many women have you actually asked out? And are you so sure that you're not picking women who will certainly reject you because you're trying to bat out of your league? Because you might be. So, and I'm speaking about this as a clinician too, because I had plenty of men in my practice who were, radically unsuccessful with women. I had one man in particular. He was so afraid of women he couldn't use the phone. He was too afraid of everyone to use the phone. And he had been bullied like mad, and he had his problems. So I know what this is like, but pornography is a big problem. It's a big problem. It's a real curse, that pornography, in my opinion.
When it comes to the way men and women see prawn, I'm going to say prawn.
Say Tron Legacy. I used to be a joke in my shop. It was like Tron Legacy. That's what you called it.
All right. Anyways, if you think of prawn, that's literally no commitment, no attachment, no risk of nothing. Sex without commitment. That is the best deal that a male species can ever get.
Every guy that I've heard, they say that, the real thing is way better than just watching. But I might see that have an effect on a person who's never experienced that before, so they might think that porn is just the best that it can get.
I'm like with Van here. It goes with more of how the different sexes kind of view what sex is. It's more or less the people who aren't getting anything to be able to get something at the very least.
In my opinion, because it's an easy out. And so we don't know what the consequences of that are. We're starting to understand some of them. But if you were better, you'd be more successful with women. So you have to have that in your mind. And you cannot be angry at women. It's stupid. Women, it's like women being angry at men. It's a sign of psychological trouble, that.
So you feel as though Dr. Peterson is that, for the men who are complaining about the standards of women today and it being elevated, that it's not so much a focus of pointing the finger at them not choosing them, but more so looking in the mirror and asking themselves what can they do to improve themselves to be so desirable, instead of focusing simply in on the inability of what you're going
Be a little
through
stronger. Be a little stronger, dress a little better, speak a little more clearly, aim a little higher, and practice that, and that'll work. Now, I know
people need to go outside too, because guys be locked in the room all day, then they wonder why they don't get anything. Like, bro, you're not outside, you're not anywhere, you're not in social groups. Like
it all ties in. You feel me? Like, going out correlates to meeting women.
a little stronger. Be a little stronger, dress a little better, speak a little more clearly, aim a little higher, and practice that, and that'll work. Now, I know that that's more difficult for some people than others, because some people bear incredibly difficult developmental burdens, and I'm not saying that this is easy, but I'm saying that it's a useful reaction. What else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Complain about women? I've seen that in men. I went out with a group of men who were having trouble with their wives, and they'd gone off to this couples retreat, and it was mostly rubbish, although they were trying a bit to get their lives together. And I spent a whole day with them. There were 3 of them, and one of them was a guy that I'd known for quite a while, and every single word he said was a lie. And all these 3 did the whole day was complain about their wives. And I thought, what the hell's wrong with you guys? You picked them.
I mean, maybe those guys, those were the only girls that they could get. Maybe they did it out of necessity.
Most baby mamas be talking hella smack about their baby daddies. Like, that's your baby daddy. You picked that.
You picked him and then chose to keep the baby.
And same for the guys.
But also, it is tough for guys to like get a divorce too, because like if I divorce, she's gonna take half of what I own. So guys kind of have to put up with like a girl that they don't even like.
That's why you take the golden rule. Get it one time and see if it's right.
Yo, y'all bugging. Chill out with that, bro. Chill out.
What the hell's wrong with you guys? Like, you picked them. They're these women you picked, you know, and maybe they have their flaws, but they're your wives. And that's how you talk about them? And you think they're the problem? You're so dumb that you don't even know that you shouldn't badmouth your wife. Just because she's your wife. Like when Tammy and I got married, we had a discussion about that. It's like, she has her flaws and I have my flaws, but I'm her husband and she's my wife. And there's a certain respect that goes along with that category, if you have any sense. And so that's an extension of the same thing. You know, it's best to look to yourself. Now and then you can, you know, things have gone rotten in society and you have to bear your responsibility. You have to address that at a social level and a communal level. But fundamentally, it's like, and you do so much less harm if you look to yourself first as the problem. But then believe me, you're plenty of problem for you. You're all the problem you need for you. That's for sure.
What he said about him and Tammy, his wife, I can relate to that because that's what I've learned from my brother too. He told me about this too. He was like, yeah, it doesn't matter whether or not she's right or wrong. She's always right until you're in private, and then that's when you talk about it. So
you're telling me, Ozzy, if your shorty walked up to like a guy who's 6'8", muscular as hell, slap the out this man.
I'm slapping him, bro. I'm sorry, I'm slapping him. But that's why I pick my woman wisely.
Yeah. Like I was gonna say, like you with a girl who's like that, you should probably end it off like I screw up, but then after that we're breaking up. Like you can't be putting me in those type of situations.
Yo, y'all see that video of that dude that got knocked out at the football game, bro?
At the football game?
Do you think it's like taught, or do you think it's like something that's like self-implied, like the society?
For me, I learned it a little bit from my older brother, but I've just realized like I've literally not once have I ever said a single negative thing about my girl to my mom or my dad. The people that I'm gonna give like permission, that's gonna give me permission to marry her someday or whatever. Because it doesn't make any sense. It's gonna ruin her reputation. It's gonna ruin my reputation.
That's what you're supposed to do. Back in like middle school, like elementary school, when you used to bring over the friends, like over your house. Like you know the friends who you can bring over, not because of the fact that they're like nice. It's about like them being able to put on like a face in front of your parents. I think that's where it's like taught from.
The last thing you want is to be with a girl for like the rest of your life, and like your in-laws aren't on good terms with each other. You feel me? Like that's not gonna look good.
Oh my God, that's the word.
So what would you say, Dr. Peterson, to the young men who are pushing back on this idea, and the young men who say, like, you know, traditionally speaking, there was assortative mating where if you were a guy, you're a middle class, you can get a middle class partner. You're a guy making $40,000 a year, you can get a certain level of partner. That in some communities, in some environments, you know, because of, you know, degrees or things like that, if you're a guy, you know, making $50,000 a year or $60,000 a year, and you're doing relatively well, that the women in your cohort who are similar partners to you may not desire you. Instead of wanting a partner making 60, want a partner making 80. So what would you say to those guys?
Mostly I'd say that was an excuse. But I wouldn't go farther than that, because, you know, I don't know how to answer those questions in some ways at a collective level, which is why I focus on the individual. If someone came to me and told me that, the first thing I would do is listen to them for like 10 sessions. Just to find out what they're thinking and to find out what the problem actually is, because they think they know what the problem is. You know, it's these picky women, and that could be the problem. You know, for them, it might be. Maybe there's a demographic issue or community issue that I don't understand. So I wouldn't assume that I knew what the problem was. But those sorts of things, in my experience, have to be solved at a high level of detail, like at high resolution. So let's say you are having trouble finding a mate. You know, and you think, well, I'm reasonably symmetrical, I'm in decent physical condition, I'm young, I have a decent salary, but still, okay, well, that's a deep dive issue. I don't know what's wrong. We'd have to talk about that. And I do mostly listen. It's like, you seem okay. So why don't you have a partner? Well, that's a deep mystery. Like, it's really a deep mystery. It's nothing trivial. There's no simple solution to that. And so
If someone tells you 60% of women are aiming for men who are making $60,000 plus a year, you go on like your creed montage. You're just like running up the stairs, you know, and then when you get to $60,000 a year, you realize these shorties aren't even that worth it, man. Back to Tron Legacy.
I don't really do sociology in some sense, except insofar as I understand the role of the individual in relationship to society. So I would say to someone like that, practically, if you want to do something, go see a cognitive behavioral psychologist and take the problem apart and strategize. That you'll figure out how to fix it.
That's good. That's good because
it's a serious problem, right?
Yeah, definitely a serious problem. And I think what ends up happening is that, like you said, too many people create a one-size-fit-all problem to what they're going on. So they say, well, the reason I'm unsuccessful is because of A, but in reality, if you could talk to a wiser individual and sit down, you might realize that the problem isn't aka the women. Maybe the problem is that, you're lacking confidence, you're lacking communication skill, you're picking the wrong kind of individuals, and there's a myriad of varieties of issues instead of just simply making it just a one-size-fit-all problem.
And that's why you gotta actually go out there and experience it for yourself. You gotta actually approach these women.
Crunch the numbers. They go out there, speak to as many people as you can, and if you're still like down bad, maybe you just like change names, change locations.
I mean, don't make it a numbers game. You want to just speak to people just to speak to people. You want to do it for a purpose. And if it's still terrible and tragic, then go see a doctor.
I like what Van just said. Morpheus to Neo. I can only show you the door. You have to open it.
Picking the wrong kind of individuals, and there's a myriad of varieties of issues instead of just simply making it just a one-size-fit-all problem.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's also in some ways a lot less depressing to particularize like that, because you find out a bunch of problems you don't have, right? So you can just those aren't my problems. It turns out my problem is this, and then that might be non-trivial, and probably is, but at least it's not everything, right? And I also think that when we talk about things like climate change, it's like, well, really, there's no such thing as the climate. It's not a useful word when you're trying to solve a problem. And what do you mean by change exactly? Like these are really low resolution concepts, and all the solutions are high resolution. And it requires particularized expertise to solve some genuine actionable problem. You have to decompose the problem. And then you have to be satisfied with addressing some micro element of it. There's no fixing climate change. That conceptually, it's just an indication of unsophisticated thinking. That's all it is. And then there's an insistence. Well, climate change is real. Well, what do you mean by real? What do you mean by change? What do you mean by climate? How much do you know about climate? And when you talk to real experts, they've particularized. So I'll give you an example. Glenn Schellenberger, I hope I got that right. I just talked to him. He wrote this book recently called Apocalypse Never. And he was a climate activist, an eco-activist for a long time. One of the things he said was, he talked to an MIT scientist who said, if you want to knock carbon dioxide emissions down, the best thing to do would be to work to help India burn more coal. It's like, who would guess that except a particularized expert? The reason for that is that it's better than wood. And it's a pathway on the way to natural gas and perhaps nuclear. But it's not obvious. Because in the short term, it makes the problem worse, or it seems to. And so that's particularized knowledge. And you have to particularize your problem. Why can't men find women to date? That's not your problem. Your problem is why you can't find the woman you want.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And you have to assume that's your problem, because otherwise you have to assume that it's the women's problem. And really? They're all wrong and you're right. Really? Lucky you. Maybe you are. You're an undiscovered gem of some sort. Probably not.
No, that was really powerful, Jordan Peterson. I love the call always back to accountability. And so as one who's been married for so many decades, I think one of the challenges a lot of men do is they aim for the wrong women, or they pick the wrong women. So in your personal experience from your years of marriage, and there's also years of study, what would you say are things that men need to be focusing in on when it's trying to select a woman for a long-term marriage partner?
Well, you want someone honest. That's
I agree.
really, really important.
Yeah.
Someone who will do her best to tell the truth. And my wife swore she'd do that before we got married, and she has.
Ain't nothing worse than just going off to do something, like going off to work or going off to hang out with the boys, and you don't know what she's on about. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Remember that video that we had about what would you rather have, a naggy wife or a dishonest, beautiful woman? What he brought up, what Hafiz brought up about men picking women. I don't think that's really the problem, because women pick, not men. You can't have a relationship if the woman doesn't want you.
She has to want you first, but you have to make her want you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel like this question
So,
is it's aimed at like higher value men that actually have the option to pick
That's a
between
weird thing to
men
say,
and women.
higher value men.
Just men that have
So-
options. Men that have options.
Oh, okay, men that have
Because obviously, if you're not, if you're just an ordinary guy, you only have one or two. You can't just be like, oh, I need to pick the right one that's honest.
You got two options, bro. Flip a coin or something. I mean,
Oh yeah, one more thing. I remember telling Alan about like all these problems that me and my girl were going through, or whatever. And then not even like a week or two later, I told Alan that like my girl and I were like really good, and that the solution for it was just we just became more honest with each other. So just that transparency that kept us going very, very strong. And I'm not gonna lie, if it wasn't for that, I don't know where it will be right now. So honesty is key, 100%. I agree.
Probably better than I have. And so that's a rock, man, at the bottom of things, you know. So and you can't underplay the role of sexual attraction. And that's a mysterious thing. And so that's crucial as far as I'm concerned, and can't be
So I have
just,
a real
you know.
question about
Yeah.
that, Jordan Peterson, Dr. Peterson. So you mentioned pornography, and we do countless pieces of content to be able to help young men overcome that issue and provide tons of resources to help them support them. So what I've noticed that happens sometimes is because of years of watching pornography, the men's sexual attraction becomes warped. And so how can a man whose sexual attraction to women has become warped to the extreme ends due to so much consumption of pornography, how can that man go back to now being attracted to, you know, more natural looking women, or more women that could be around their, you know, their lives instead of the projected?
Well, deprivation.
You know,
Deprivation.
Facts. The lack of anything will increase desire.
I think again, like, that's a problem with like people with like a lot of options to be facing. You know what I mean? If you don't have
Facts.
that many
Facts,
options, you're
yo.
like,
Shit. Hafiz is asking personal questions, alright? This is Hafiz problems.
I keep on choosing the wrong women, bro. How do I get better?
let me get better at it.
I'm only attracted to big booty bitches, man. I don't know what to do.
Dr. Peterson was talking about here. I think he meant like deprivation of like not like the women, but like of like the Tron legacy of that aspect. I think that he's saying like if you stop doing that, maybe like your natural instincts will just kind of kick in. I think that's what he was getting on.
Deprivation is helpful. Let's see what he means by that.
instead of the projected.
Well, deprivation
you know,
is helpful. You know, I mean, so I think it's reasonable to assume that there's a novelty edge in pornography, like there is in so many quasi-addictive phenomena. And so it has to become, because novelty is a sexual kick, it has to stay novel, and that means that over time it's going to become more extreme.
Oh, he means depriving yourself from pornography. Okay, well, I thought he meant like depriving yourself from any ads. I mean, that's the same thing, I guess.
It pretty much is, yeah.
Yeah. The less you have of anything, the more you want of it. Simple.
All right, y'all. If you all enjoyed the video, we would appreciate a like, comment, and subscribe.